Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another video. Thank you all so much for tuning in. And in today's episode, we're going to go ahead and take a closer look at the newest release by the company Davidoff, and this one is called Cool Water Intense, so make sure to stay tuned. So more than 30 years later, Cool Water releases an intense version to the very iconic fragrance from the late 80s. As a matter of fact, I believe this fragrance came out in 87 or 88, and I was born in 88. So it was right around the time when I was born. The perfumer for this one is Annick Menardo, who is one of my favorite perfumers. She really is a master perfumer who started her career in Firmenich, and she has made fragrances like Eau Masculin by Lolita Lempicka, which is now just called Lempicka. She has also made fragrances like Black by Bulgari, and she's made Hypnotic Poison by Christian Dior, even Bois d'Argent, which is one of my favorite fragrances. And so I was really excited to get my nose on this one, especially after looking at the note breakdown, right? And so it has mandarin orange, amber. It also has a little bit of coconut in there too. And I know coconut has been interpreted in a number of different ways on the designer side for the year of 2019. So there's Le Beau by Jean Paul Gaultier. That one has a dominant coconut note. There's also Light Blue Sun by Dolce & Gabbana. That one also has a coconut note. So finding out that, coconut is also utilized in this one, I don't think it's used so much that it's become the new trend in the designer industry, but I'm always curious to see how it's going to be implemented. And so I think that a lot of people who will end up buying this fragrance are the people who have experience with the original Cool Water. I personally have some friends who, one of them being my friend Winston. Thank you so much for lending me this bottle for review, by the way. I really appreciate you for that. I don't know if I'd purchase it. He is a huge fan of the original Cool Water. And so I think that a lot of people who like the original Cool Water will go out of their way to purchase this one. And so there's a bit of a caution here. It doesn't smell like the original Cool Water. And so we'll be talking about the smell a little bit more at length, but let's start things off with the presentation. So the box for this one is very similar to other Cool Water presentations that you may have seen in the past, just as intense below the Cool Water name. On the very bottom, you will see the UPC and the serial number printed below that in black ink, and it should match up with the one found on the bottle. So the presentation for the bottle looks nearly identical to the newer formulations of the original Cool Water. On the very bottom, you have a sticker with your serial number printed in black ink if you're looking to authenticate your purchase. The cap for this one does not click into place, and it's not a very snug fit. Just be careful if you're going to pick it up from the cap. And the distribution on the atomizer is nice and wide. Let's continue with the smell. As soon as the fragrance opens up, you're going to smell a little bit of this orangey warmth. And I think it's the orange in combination with the sweetness of the resins in the base. And there's certainly an ambery warmth going on in this fragrance that is not to be doubted. And I think that there's a fine balance of the vanilla, but also probably the benzoin or the synthetic counterpart of what would be benzoin that is creating this orangey combination. It also kind of reminds me a little bit of galbanum. And the reason I say that is because although galbanum can have the tendency of having a little bit of a bitter aromatic profile, the way that it's used in Biagiotti's Roma per Uomo, I find it to be rather orangey. And I also find a similarity in this one too. Now, does this smell aquatic? Yeah, I think it does. I think it smells aquatic, not necessarily exactly in the way that Cool Water smells aquatic, and that obviously is a classic fragrance composed by Pierre Bourdon. And, it did utilize a lot of Cologne, or I should say does, because it's still currently in the formulations, and utilizes a lot of Cologne, which is a synthetic molecule that gives off an aquatic vibe. And we've seen that ingredient being utilized in many fragrances, L'Eau de Pour Homme by Issey Miyake being another very popular one. Also, believe it or not, Drakkar Noir. And so in the case of this fragrance, I think there is a little bit of that going on in here, but it's not utilized to the effect that it gives off a aquatic vibe. And perhaps that's also on account of the inclusion of those other warm, ambery, citrusy notes that kind of take away from that overall aquatic nature that we become so accustomed to with the original Cool Water. The original Cool Water is at times salty, at times fresh, at times citrusy, at times aquatic and marine-like. And I really enjoy the original Cool Water. However, I do find it to be a fragrance that is very reminiscent of the 90s. And so if you want to distance yourself from that, obviously you want to wear something a bit more contemporary. Not to say that cool water doesn't smell contemporary. I think it still does. It's not one of these 80s powerhouse, fur, oak moss dominant fragrances. But I think in the case of this one, they did definitely take it in sweeter territory. I don't think it's an intense version of the original Cool Water. So I see that being a concern for a lot of people. I think an added concern is the fact that Cool Water has been reformulated an innumerable amount of times. And so I think in the case of the reformulation, that's gotten a lot of people to start talking about the weakened performance of more recent formulations and batches. And so maybe this is somewhat a response to that. Like, oh, okay, you think that Cool Water doesn't last as long as it used to? Here's an intense version for you. But I think also in the manipulation of the original fragrance, they've changed things around a lot. And so I think that if somebody has been wearing Cool Water since its inception and they're looking to try something different, perhaps they've tried some other flankers and whatnot, if they get their nose on this one, if you're a veteran, if you're somebody who has been wearing Cool Water for a long time, you will inevitably be able to smell the differences between this one and the original Cool Water. However, is that to suggest that this one smells bad? I don't think it does. I think that it's a quirky composition. I think that in terms of the note breakdown, it doesn't fully deliver. I think I was expecting a little bit more coconut, and I'm definitely getting a lot more coconut in Le Beau by Jean Paul Gaultier, as well as, Dolce Gabbana, the One Sun. I think, not the One Sun, Light Blue Sun, I get a lot more coconut in that one. But I think in the case of this one, it's more of this citrusy, orangey, ambery warmth with a little bit of an aquatic tinge. And I think it's a pleasant scent, and I think it's one that is not going to turn away too many people, especially somebody just smelling it freshly. I think that if I were going into this blind and somebody were to ask me, what fragrance do you think this is a flanker of? I would not be able to guess Cool Water, just because the differences are so stark. But I do think it's a pleasant scent. I don't think it's one that's groundbreaking necessarily, and I really don't think it's one that does things so differently that it's immediately, warranting of a purchase. But I think that for the casual consumer, somebody who smells this one, they're going to think it smells good. And I think if that's what they were going for, they certainly did the job. I think if they're going for a fragrance that lasts a little bit longer than the original Cool Water, perhaps with some of the more recent formulations, the intense designation could certainly give off that mental image. And I do think that this one does last a little bit longer than the current formulations of Cool Water, not necessarily the original, which people said they had really, really good longevity from. But you are going to get a mostly synthetic ambery fragrance with a little bit of an orangey opening, not much coconut to speak of, and there is a little bit of a marine vibe, but it's definitely diminished when compared to the original Cool Water. Let's go ahead and finish things off with my overall assessment. In terms of the uniqueness and the overall smell, I don't find this fragrance to be ultra unique. It's definitely something that I've smelled before. I can't quite pinpoint what it is, but I don't think that they were being too experimental or too daring with this one. And I think that that's something that I know Anique Minardo is really good at. She's really good at being very experimental with fragrances like Bulgari Black or Hypnotic Poison with that overdose of almond in there. I mean, those fragrances are just brilliantly made, in my opinion, of course. I think in the case of this fragrance, it's not that unique, and the overall smell, while it is pleasant, I think it will also, disrupt some people's happiness in the case that it's not very similar to the original Cool Water. For some people, that might be a good thing, right? They might think that the original Cool Water is played out. They want something different. For a lot of other hardcore, diehard fans, if you want something that's just a minor and subtle variant of the original Cool Water, maybe this one won't necessarily do that for you. For longevity on this fragrance, I got about 6 to 7 hours, which isn't bad. I think with the more recent formulations of Cool Water, people are getting like 4 or 5 hours, so it's a minor improvement, but it's an improvement nonetheless. In terms of the projection, great for the first hour and a half to 2 hours. It's not until that 4-hour mark that it starts to sit closer to the skin, 3.5 to 4 hours, I would say. In terms of the versatility on this one, I do find this to be rather versatile. However, it still conveys a casual vibe, so I wouldn't wear this one one in a dressed up occasion, I just think that there are far better options on the market for that. And I do see this one leaning a little bit masculine, but of course, these are just recommendations. Wear what you like. And I think in terms of seasons, this is more like on the springtime wear for me. I think I wouldn't necessarily wear this one in the dead of summer because it does have a tendency of leaning somewhat sweet on account of that ambery base. And then I think I wouldn't wear this one in the winter time because it's just not strong enough for the winter. And I think, again, there are far better options to be worn in the winter time. Presentation for this one, almost identical to the current formulations of Cool Water. My final verdict on this one is if you are a fan of the Cool Water DNA, but you think it's played out and you want something that's done differently while still being aquatic and having the Davidoff name attached to it, check this one out. If you want something that is a little bit different, not too different, but a little bit different from other designer fragrances on the market nowadays, check this one out as well. But as I said previously, there is just something about this one where I know I've smelled this before. I just can't quite put my finger on it. Overall, I don't think it's that great of a release. However, smell is subjective, and so it doesn't cater to my personal taste. But please, don't let me discourage you from going out there, smelling this for yourself. If you like it, please wear it with pride, wear it confidently, because scent is very personal. But there you have it. That was my review of Cool Water Intense by Davidoff. If you own or have tried this fragrance, I would love to know what you think. Leave a comment down below. I really hope you like this one, And so if you have experience with it, I always love to start a discussion. If you're new to this channel and you took something of value from this video, I would love it if you could support this channel. Really, the only thing you need to do is subscribe to it. This way, whenever I do put out future videos, you'll also watch those, and that supports the channel. And I would also encourage you to click on that notification bell, so this way, whenever I do upload those future releases, you will get that push notification sent straight to your phone, and it will optimize the possibilities of you watching my video. Thanks again for watching. I love you all. We'll see you next time. Bye.